AI 시대의 창작 워크플로우, 속도와 확장성 그리고 창의성의 균형을 주제로 강연을 해주시겠습니다. 길리 밀러님은 현재 유니티의 디자인 디렉터로서 전 세계 디자이너 스튜디오를 이끌며 영향력 있는 캠페인과 크리에이티브 전략을 주도하고 계신데요. 유니티, 아이언소스, HP 등 업계를 선도하는 글로벌 기업에서 10년 이상의 경력을 보유하고 계십니다. 오늘은 글로벌 디자이너 스튜디오에서 창작자들을 위한 AI 도구를 어떻게 활용을 할지 그리고 AI 기반 창작 프로세스에 대한 인사이트를 공유해 주신다고 합니다. 길리 밀러님을 여러분 큰 박수로 모시겠습니다.
Hi everyone. Thank you for surviving all the way up to the last session for today. So I hope it'll be interesting enough for you to keep listening. But I want to start with a short story. So before I came here, I was driving in Austin and I was driving behind Waymo. So Waymo, if you don't know, it's one of those automated cars. So it drives with no driver by itself and it's like a taxi. You can order it everywhere. But I was driving behind the car and then this particular Waymo trying to turn left, but the traffic light was broken and the car just stopped completely, blocking the entire lane and not knowing what to do because it wasn't trained to deal with such a situation. So 1 minute passed, 2, 3, and you know when you're waiting in line, 2 and 3 minutes can feel like 3 days. And then finally a guy with a Waymo jacket came in and got into the car and used his hand and his voice to signal the other drivers. And then he drove the car and let us all go through. And in that moment, I felt like that's where human comes in with a world that is overflowing with AI and machine, and we have a machine that can write and they can design and they can drive. Where does the human come from? Where does the human aspect comes in? And this is what I want to talk about today. So hi, I'm Gili Miller. I'm the design director in Unity. I have 2 wonderful kids who think I play games all day long, and I wish it was that simple. I'm based in Austin, but I'm originally from Tel Aviv. And I lead a lot of creative services in Unity. So we talk about with the product team, the different designers. We have designers for motion, for production, graphic designers, brand designers, so all the range that you can imagine. And we're, in the past 2 years, and I think you've been experiencing it as well, been navigating in so many different new experience, and we were trying to think, how do we integrate AI into all those like creative flow, and how do we do that without losing what makes us as creators most meaningful? So as you can see on the timeline, the adoption of change is really quickly. So if in 2022 we started getting AI tools, now it shifts to a change that happens within months or quarters or days even. And there's new tools popping up, there's new capabilities that are arriving. And so the question is not whether or not to use AI, is how we use it right. So back to my Waymo story, on the traffic light, I think that moment represents where we are with AI in creative world. So AI can solve 90% of our processes. It's excel when we talk about structured environment, but the creativity, that's where things get messy. Creativity is in that part where the traffic light is broken and you need to figure it out. And how do we adapt AI in that situation? I'll start with changing how we think about AI. And today I want to share the lesson that I learned with my team in that long 2 years process, and hopefully that we'll keep learning as we go. And I want to talk about 3 main things. So the speed that AI gives us, the scale that it enables us, and the soul that we need to protect in that process. And let me start with the speed. So what's keeping up with AI really looks like? So before AI, a brand designer used to spend 3 days exploring concept, then he would create them, and he will have 3 to 4 strong direction, then get feedback and refine. Today, when we have AI and we use Chat and we use Midjourney and we use Leonardo, and so we can generate more than 100 variations in just 1 hour. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the paradox. AI isn't supposed to save us time. Well, it's supposed to save us time, but what really happens is we're getting busier than ever. So recent researchers call this the productivity paradox, because tools improves efficiency, but the expectations escalate and our timeline shrinks and we expect more and faster. We're not producing less work in more time, we're producing more work in the same time. So how do we solve that productivity paradox? We shift our mindset. So when new technologies emerge, we like to compare it to something familiar. When car was invented, we compare them to horseless carriages. And we still call the cars, we call them in horsepower. So it's something we still use. When the first computer interfaces appeared, we compare them to like our work desks. And we even call them after that. And when AI emerged into our lives, we used words like agent or assistant, and maybe referring to Clippy, the Microsoft Clipper. I feel like you guys are all too young to know that. But here's a shift that changed the world of AI for me and for my team. We stopped treating AI like a tool or an agent, and we started treating it as a collaborator. And not an equal collaborator, more like an intern, and that distinction really matters. So imagine having an intern. He never sleeps. He wakes up every morning with 100 new ideas. Most of them are terrible, but some of them are great. And if that's what AI is, that's how he feels like in our creative work today. So this infinite intern needs some directions, like a new interns that you have in your office. We need to direct it and to shape it in the way we want to get the type of creativity or the type of materials that we want to get. And let me show you how two teams work on the same project using AI, but getting totally different results. So if we treat AI like a tool, then we'll ask him or we'll prompt him, hey AI, can you please create a campaign with campaign visuals? And then AI will dump us with 100 variations. Then our team will go over it, probably get overwhelmed, choose 7 ideas because they're tired, not because they're great, and the result will be mediocrity. But if we treat AI like an intern, then we brief it with the content and we share examples. Then we'll get those 100 variations, but we won't take whatever he got. We will feedback it back. So we'll tell him, this 3 has potential. What about the composition and these ideas? They feel a little bit off. Can you adjust X, Y, and Z? And then AI will refine, and we will art direct the final result. So the result in that situation will be excellent. So it's the same AI, same project, different outcomes. So what did we achieve? We achieved faster execution, better outcome, but the human judgment, that's what made it meaningful. So this type of collaboration doesn't replace us, it makes us valuable. And it strengthens our ability to explore our creativity process. And that brings me to my second topic today, which is scale. Or I like dramatic names, the 90% no one sees. And I'm sure you're all familiar with this slide because it's appear in like 90% of all the sales presentations today. But as cliche as it is, this perfectly captures the idea of the unseen work. So in creativity, like in this iceberg, most of what happens below the surface. And AI doesn't eliminate that 90% that happens below the surface, it transforms it. And here's another cliche image. But all that practice, the research, the exploration, that's the 90% that makes the visible 10% so powerful. And here's what most people miss about AI in creative workflows. Everybody sees that 10%, that final outcome, that polished result. But AI doesn't erase that, it's reshape it. So what's that 90% that no one sees? So before AI, we used to, and that's an example for example for our production teams, okay? So before AI, we had to scout location, we had to coordinate teams, we had to spend days in post-production and editing. So we were spending this 90% to get that amazing 10% visible result in logistics and technical execution. But with AI, and with those amazing tools that we saw today and that are out there in the world, you can create the high-quality video content without even filming it. So that way, your 90% of your time shift to, and this is my version of reduce, reuse, recycle for designers, iterate, curate, and refine. So you iterate. You can test 20 storytelling approaches instead of 2 because you have more time. You can curate your narrative to resonate best with your clients, with your developers, with your creators. And you can refine your work. So you take it from AI generated to something that is authentically matches your brand. And this technical execution got faster, but the strategic work, the storytelling, the brand alignment, all that is now more embedded into our workflow, and we have more time to do that. So the skill set shifted from hand to head, and from execution to strategic judgment. And back to the iceberg, that hidden layer is where that expertise lives. So when we use AI tool, we're not just saving time, we're redirecting it. And there is something counterintuitive about tedious parts of our creative workflows. They're not always need to be automated, and this is why. So that's a great example from a movie I love. I don't know if you watched it. It's called Karate Kid. But there is an amazing part in it where the old teacher trying to teach the younger guy how to wash his car, and he tells him, wax off, wax on. Like, you have to do this in a very repetitive, very known way. And in the movie, it seems like it's a meaningless repetition, but as you go along, and I don't want to spoil or anything, it turns out to be a very sessional training for whatever he's doing. Hint, karate. And researchers shows us that this repetitive, even frustrating task puts our brain into a different mode where we get deeper ideas and more creative thoughts. So sometimes that grunt work is the path to that creative spark. And the trick is knowing which frictions to keep and which one to let go and automate. So which will fuel our insights and which we can let AI do by itself. Now, this question is how we turn this chaos of creativity into a workflow. And I do workflow, so I want to tell you a little bit of how we do it. So when we started incorporating AI into our creative processes, that balance became very important. So the real shift happened when we moved from experimenting into reliable collaboration. And that requires a very unique structure. And here's how we approach that balance with a few frameworks. So the first principle or framework will be collaborate, don't delegate. So delegation means do this task for me. Collaboration means let's explore this together. When you delegate, you accept the first result. When you collaborate, you iterate toward excellence. So here's an example for bad delegation. So create a visual element that will support our indie developer event. Okay, but here is a better example. I'm designing for Unity indie game developers who feel overwhelmed by technical tools. The visual should feel empowering and accessible, not corporate. Here are 3 examples of the work that I love, and this is why. And now show me your thinking process, and then generate 5 directions. What did we do here? We gave AI the content, we gave it constraint, and we asked him for his collaboration. The second rule, I love rules. So rules before deliverables. When you define your creative space, you get better results. When you define what's your brand constraints, you get better results. So what's your brand visual style? What's your off-brand? What's your emotional tone that you want to pass? What is the brand DNA? If we give AI all those things, we'll get better results. And I want to give you a Clippy the Clipper tip. But you can create prompt libraries for your team, for your studios, for yourself. So the prompt library can include your brand voice and your visual language, examples that resonate with your community, pitfalls to avoid. And that way, you're always defining your creativity space within AI. And that's a very, very fancy table right here. But you can also just use Excel to have all your information in and share with your team. And just like Lego, constraints do not limit us, it's focusing us. So constraints breed creativity, even when we use AI. And that brings us to our third principle for today. So that's iterate the process, not just the creative. Most of the teams iterates on their outputs. How many of you have a folder series like this in your files that is called final? I promise you it's the final one. The real there's no more finals after this final. Okay, so this is part of our creative process. This is part of a feedback process. But what I suggest is that we don't just iterate on the output. We also iterate on how we use AI. So we check ourselves. Is the prompt that I'm using give me better result? Where did AI value me versus slow me down? When I do that, when I critique my own AI process, I will get better result. And here's another clip, the Clipper tip. Ask AI to ask you better questions. So you'll be surprised how much richer and more interesting the conversation get when you do this with AI. AI can actually teach you how to use it better by helping you clarify your own thinking. So for example, when I do visual storytelling, I can ask AI, hey AI, can you show me a creator presenting a mobile game during a holiday season peak? Because that's what I need. But before you do so, please, before you do the generating, please ask me 5 targeted questions. So then AI can ask you about your target audience specific. What's the composition you're looking for? What kind of lighting you want to use? Characters, emotions. So this process really does 2 things. So it's first you to clarify your idea, and it gives AI enough context so he can collaborate with you efficiently. So it's a bit like teaching your intern to brief you back. And the better question they ask, the better final workout that you'll have in the end. And this framework works regardless of which tool you use. So the tools are changing, they will change. This world is moving faster, but those skill set can stay with us, at least for the near future. I don't know, maybe we're just gonna have robots to do anything but for us, but until then, these are useful tools. So going back to that 90% unseen work, collaborate with AI, set the tone and the constraints for your brand, and then iterate on how you use AI. And that brings me to our last point for today, the soul. So structure alone isn't enough. You need the right leadership approach, and this is what I would call the soul. So these are the human questions that requires human judgment. How do we, as leader, protect what makes creative work meaningful while navigating through this AI-powered change? And frameworks and tools are great, but the team isn't asking you how I use Leonardo, how I use Midjourney or ChatGPT. They're asking you, will I have a job in 2 years? Am I falling behind because I don't use AI constantly? Or how do I prove my values when AI does my work faster? So this is where the soul comes in. And it's about protecting what creativity and human judgment is as we adopt the AI. And remember that Waymo story, the guy with the yellow jacket? That's, for me, leadership in the age of AI. He didn't replace the automated car. He didn't throw out the technology. He stepped in when human judgment was needed, and then he stepped back out. And that's what we do as creative leaders. We create that conditions for AI to work efficiently. We step in when contexts get complex, and then we make the judgment call that machine can't make. And here's what data shows us. So leaders and creative directors are actually the most enthusiastic about AI adoption. They are 71 more enthusiastic about it, or be likely to be more curious about it, than your junior team member. But here's the thing, and this is a great analogy I heard from Jamie Oatley in one of his talks. Collaborating with AI sometimes feel like flossing. Let it sink. So it's recommended by your dentist. Everybody should do it. But show me in a raise of hand who flossed this morning. No one flossed. Okay, thank you for proving my point. Everybody knows they should collaborate with AI. Everybody knows they should iterate, they push the boundaries behind the first result. But in the chaos of your daily work, it's so easy to skip it, to take the first outcome, to treat AI like a vending machine. And the question isn't whether you're enthusiastic about AI or not. It's whether you can create a culture where people actually use it. And that is the leadership change. Not framework, culture. And how do we create that culture? We first shift our narrative from fear to partnership. Your biggest fear on the team is, am I going to be replaced? Our job is to reframe what's happening. And these are all the things that we already mentioned today. So if your team asks you, AI is going to replace me, so you say AI doesn't replace creativity, it amplifies your ability to explore more territories. It's things that you couldn't do in the past, but you can do today very easily. AI doesn't do your job faster, it helps you to iterate faster. And AI doesn't replace your work, it allows you to focus on what you do best. And we set these different goals to our team to reflect that shift. So if we call their designer brand designers, or brand designer of the month, we can now shift their goals and outcomes to best visual curators and prompt architect of the month. And if there's a motion designer, he can become the animation director and AI tool specialist. So words matter, framing matters, the work evolves, and the value of what we do increases. And we just need to frame it in the right way. We want to make time for human insights. So everything is moving fast. AI is moving fast. But AI is phenomenal at that speed and that volume. But it's terrible at understanding why concepts resonate emotionally, and reading subtext, and knowing when to break the rules. And that's where the humans come in. So we try to build time in our team schedule for team critique sessions, for strategic brainstorming on creative directions, for collaborating session between team members. The speed is valuable, but your human soul is replaceable. And another point that we're trying to do is to make our space, our creative space, safe to fail. We encourage experimenting, and we encourage it by making it safe to fail. Now, you thought you're going to have a full presentation of a designer without showing us Steve Jobs, but you were wrong. So Steve Jobs said it better than I do, but he said, if you're afraid to fail, you can't get very far. And this is true about AI, too. Remember the flossing problem? Here's how we solve it. We make it part of a culture, not a chore. So we share our terrible AI inputs with our team members. We experiment AI weekly with our daily task. We celebrate learning, not successes. We make it safe to fail, and we make it expected to try. And that's what's most important. We always share everything. So we talked about speed, how we're supposed to treat AI like that infinite intern. We're supposed to collaborate with it. We're supposed to iterate with it, push it behind the result. We talked about scale, the 90% that no one sees, the unseen work. So build frameworks, create libraries, structure, workflows that turn your chaos into an excellence, and get past that good enough consistency. And then we talked about soul, which is the speed and the scale are meaningless if we lose that what makes our creative work excel. So if we put that into our work processes and our culture, and we use AI as a partner, and we protect our creative designers, we actually make our floss into something we do daily. So if you fell asleep, this is going to wake you up like the yellow. So what do we actually do when we get back to our teams on Monday? So in the Jewish tradition, which I'm coming from, it's very expected to, when someone walks into your house, to not let it go empty-handed. So, and it's called to give you a pekele in Yiddish. So it's a little package. So here's my little package to you. Like, what are you going to take to your office on Monday? It's not moving. Okay. So pick one workflow. Choose something repetitive, something that frustrates your team. Start small, okay? And then step 2, run an experiment. Brief the AI like you brief an intern. Iterate on a result. Compare it to your old processes. You can do it within a day, 2, 3, however long you need to do it. And then share what you learned with your team, even if you failed, especially if you failed. AI gave us an incredible gift. It's the ability to explore more creativity territory and faster than ever. But it also gave us a trap, because it's the ability to stop at good enough and call it done. So the first result will always be the easiest. It would always be super fast, and it would always be mediocre. Your job as creators is to push that moment and to ask, what if we went further? What if we try it again? That is where excellence lives. And not in the first result, but in the collaboration of AI and creativity. Now go and make something excellent. Thank you.